Welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, per usual, Kobe Manzo. Got an exciting episode for you today, but before we get into literally anything, shout out the man, Carter St. John. You might not be able to see it too far from here. The fight is on the front and the back. I gotta take the headphones off. Sorry for the silence. Probably for those of you listening, that's a pretty awkward little exchange. But to make short of it, our man Carter there over at Alma College, the quarterback over there, D3 quarterbacks taking on cancer together. The official title is QBs versus Cancer. He's doing a special thing, and we had him on the show. If you missed that episode, we've had him on twice. But if you missed that episode where he talked about the organization that he started over there as a nonprofit, go back, check that out. Appreciate you, Carter, for the shirt, and glad to be just a small piece of what you have going on over there. Really special thing, and it just... The idea, it really is so simple in theory in that you get these quarterbacks to be a part of this organization. They go out and they train these high school, middle school, even younger quarterbacks. They have these little lessons, to up their skills, and obviously brings benefit to both parties. And then those kids obviously pay for the lessons. All that money, goes toward the cancer research or other foundation of their choosing, typically kind of in that local area or a foundation that has some kind of personal connection to them. So kudos to you. Thank you for the shirt, my friend. It's my privilege to wrap it on the show tonight. But in D1R 162, we're joined by another great man. That is Mike Hohensee, the quarterback. You might know him from Northwest Missouri State. I know him as the man that went to the Dallas Cowboys rookie minicamp. So really excited to get Mike back on the show. Excited to talk to him. We've got some great storylines, though, when it comes to small college football today. I put out a little bit of a feeler on our Instagram asking for feedback on what you guys like to see this offseason. I've got my ideas, but I always want to pick the brains of you guys. Already got some good responses. As far as tonight is concerned, how about a Texas NAIA team getting a Power 4 head coach? Power 4 still sounds weird, by the way. Rest in peace, Pac-12. But getting a Power 4 head coach. He wasn't a head coach at Power 4, but he was obviously coaching on staff. He's coming to be the head coach there, which is a big-time deal for them. Let's find out who that school is in a little bit. We've got a D2 team that just released an interesting schedule. By interesting, I mean they have D1, D2, D3, and NAIA opponents on their schedule in 1 year. It's incredible. It's really cool. So we're going to talk about Roosevelt there. I gave you at least the scoop on that one and talk about their schedule. They're for their first year competing as a full-fledged Division II member in the GLIAC. Then we've got a great D2 non-conference game coming out in 2024. We posted out on the socials that schedule release from Central Missouri. How about them taking on Davenport a couple weeks into the season? Let's talk about those guys, the Panthers and the Mules, two real high-powered offenses, a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. That's going to be a fun matchup in D2 football for those of you who are fans of that. And then finally, we've got a D3 team playing in Italy. We saw Carter and the Scots go to Scotland and play. We've seen some other teams travel around. How about North Park? The Vikings were in Italy, and they played a game over in Milan, I believe, which sounds ridiculous. But we're going to talk about them as well because what a cool trip and just a really great experience for those guys to be a part of. But as always, you can watch this episode on YouTube. If you are, don't forget to subscribe. And otherwise, find the video chapters, all those timestamps. You fast forward any part of the conversation, you can find those in the description on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're tuning in to this episode. But again, follow us on the socials, subscribe. Let's get into the conversation with Mike and get this thing going. Joining the show tonight, it's a former Bearcat, Northwest Missouri State, where he holds not one, not two, but three school records. Had to check up on that one. He's since graduated, got his chance in the big leagues, coming off of rookie mini camp with the Dallas Cowboys. It's Mike Hohensee. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you back on. Like I told you, one time, your one-timer is a not very exclusive club. The second time on here, it's friend of the show status. Would you consider yourself that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's always. I had a good first experience, so I'm glad I can get back.
I love it, dude. I'm pumped to get you back on here. And we covered a lot of guys who made, I shouldn't say a lot, because that group is so small of guys from our level of ball that get a chance or even have, can stick around in the league, man. But talking about that, I mean, I guess to begin with, talk about the free agent process. Is draft day as much of a not knotted up gut type of feeling for you, or obviously you knew that was probably a smaller chance for a guy like you? Talk me through that process and trying to figure out your landing spot in the first place, man.
Yeah, I mean, as a smaller school guy, draft day is not as much of a watch the TV and see what goes down. It's more of a wait till it's over and kind of hope you get some calls afterwards, get a chance to get into a camp. So as far as seeing where you're going, it's really just a waiting game and see how the draft goes and, the priority free agents after that, see where all that lands. And you kind of got to wait for rosters to kind of shake out a little bit so you could see, where you could have a chance to fit in.
And when in the process did Dallas end up reaching out? Were there any other teams that you had made contact with that you thought potentially you might end up with an invite or something along those lines?
I mean, my agent was, getting a hold of teams, and it was a lot of maybes, and we'll see down the line, just like closer to the mini camps. So after the first week of mini camps went by, obviously half the teams do the mini camps one week, the other
Yeah.
half do it the next. So after the first week went by, I was just really hoping to see if I, can get into any other ones for the second week, and I had to report for Dallas on Thursday, and they called me on a Tuesday. So it was, yeah, pretty quick turnaround. But doing what you can to stay ready for the opportunity when it arises. So I was happy to get the call.
Absolutely, man. But you have literally just a couple days to, I mean, just get absolved in all of the. I'm assuming they send you some type of. You get any scheme, playbook, any of that nature before you show up, or is all that stuff handed to you as when you walk in the doors?
Yeah, well, how it works, I think their draft picks can get the playbook
Okay.
early and see how it goes, so they can get it going into camp. But if you're an unsigned guy, and I think if you're a guy that like just gets signed, you don't get anything until you get there.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
for
So
for a quarterback too. Not to say that other positions don't need to get in the playbook, obviously, and get their, that kind of that skill up. But for a dude who's supposed to come in and command a huddle, which sounds like you did a good job. We'll talk about that in a minute. But to come in and command a huddle and try to understand what this offense, the scheme and everything looks like. Do you go back? Are you like flipping through some replays of Cowboys games from the last year, or what? What's the prep like?
no, I mean, you just got. I've just been watching a lot of film.
Yeah.
Either whether it's my past film or on our huddle, we got some NFL game film on there. Thankfully, so I was just kind of flipping through that. Going on YouTube, kind of just watching stuff. But it doesn't really help for getting a playbook for a certain team. I mean,
Yeah.
let alone the plays and all the reads that you have and everything that can come from a play, but the verbiage as well. I mean, I could say slinky and it can mean one thing to one team and a completely different thing to another team. So it's definitely yeah, it's a fast pace. You got to kind of learn it right away, and if you don't, then you're kind of dragging behind. So I didn't want that to affect me in any way. Thankfully, when I got there, the coaching staff was great, and I just really dove into the playbook as quick as I could.
There's only so many words in the English language, and those can mean things to different people. There's only so many concepts that you can technically rule abiding run in football, but those are all called different things, probably in each building, depending on where the coach comes from, their respective coaching tree and whatnot. But yeah, that'd be tough, man. I read that you were only one of only two unsigned guys at Dallas's camp. Is that right?
Yeah, so it wasn't a mini camp technically, it was their rookie orientation. So
Okay, got you.
everyone that was there was either drafted, signed, or signing. So
Okay.
everyone that was there was signing. I was basically, the mini camp arm that they needed to come in and be able to, run their offense for them. And so it's not like I was around 30 other tryout guys. I was basically the tryout guy there to kind of be their camp arm in a sort of way, and be able to get their rookies kind of kicked off and being able to learn the playbook. I went through not only meetings and practices, but everything that a new rookie would come into, like team meetings. This is what we do here. This is what we do here. They had a therapist talk to us. Their media guy was talking to us, and we just talked about scenarios, a million scenarios other than football as
Yeah.
well. So it's really life in Dallas. Basically, everything you can think of when you're arriving to a new spot and a new team is what we went over.
That is neat. And in that sense, too, you talk about you're not there with a ton of other guys who are fighting for a spot or for a deal necessarily. Not to say that the other dudes that are there that are signed or drafted aren't hungry, or those kind of things, obviously. But, you're put in that spot where you're the one guy or one of two guys that don't have a chance and opportunity locked up. In that sense, might it have actually been a better situation for you because you're not – I guess I'm not going to say not competing. That's dumb to say that. But you are one of those only two guys that maybe a lot of the eyes are on.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I being around in a pro atmosphere with a bunch of guys that, you know, are definitely going to be there coming into training camp, I thought it was awesome. And I felt like, you know, I played like I belonged there. I was in the film room like I belonged there. So it was just a great experience overall for me.
What was that? Those couple of days, I mean, you talk about the turnaround for you, obviously, but once you actually got there, was it like everything went by instantly, or was it, man, this is, you know, taking it all in, this feels like slow-mo, and could have just felt like, you know, those first couple of weeks of fall camp maybe that you get into, and what do they say, the hours are short, but the day, or what the hell, that's just some kind of expression, but did it go very fast for you, or was that a real slow motion, out-of-body type experience?
I mean, I was just trying to soak it all in and, you know, live in each moment. It's not every day you can go in there and be a part of one of the 32 teams that are in the National Football League.
Hell
So,
yeah.
you know, I tried to soak it up as much as I can. And, you know, we were there from 6 a.m. to, you know, 7 p.m. So the days were long, but, you know, I loved every second of it. And, you know, I'm itching to be back in that type of atmosphere for sure.
Just walking around with a thick-ass notebook. Pencil in the ear,
Yeah.
or what?
Oh yeah, big notebook. They give you an iPad to work with too. So
I'm gonna
you
say,
got
are
all
you a
the.
pen and paper guy, or is everything digital? What's the deal?
I'm a pen and paper guy with my
Love it.
notes, but
That's
you
good.
got an iPad that has you know, the team orient not orient the team schedule
Yep.
on it. It also has, you know, a huge library of film on it, and it also has the whole playbook on it. So anything you really need to look up for the team is on the little iPad they give you. So I thought it was awesome. But yeah, no, I'm a pen and paper type of guy. That's where I took all my. I filled up 1.5 notebooks of stuff during my 3 days there.
No
So
shot.
that tells you anything about all the details that we had to cover. Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's sick, dude. I go back and think of they're doing the tour, I think, of Stafford's house, and he had like the film guys hook up all their stuff to his like one room, and that's just his room. He's in there just breaking that shit down constantly, which is hilarious to me. I love it. But that's passion for the game. And you know, speaking of that, talk about Coach McCarthy. He had some praise for you. One of the pressers and something that we had seen on social media, talking about your presence in the huddle, right? Talking about a guy in your position that doesn't have anything guaranteed for you in the next day, week, month, whatever that is, but coming in with a confidence that a lot of guys in that position just don't have. That had to be a pretty cool feeling, hearing him endorse you in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching him coach since I was a little kid. So to hear someone say that of his stature, you know, say that about me was pretty amazing. But you know, a lot went into that. There's a lot of different things. You know, in college we get signaled to play,
Yep.
and it's not as long of a play. But you know, in the NFL, you got to hear the play from these coaches. You know, who read it off like they're saying their ABCs. That type of fastness, and you got to, you know, turn around into a huddle and repeat everything. You know, those lengthy plays that they just said. But also, you got to understand what those plays are. I mean, that first day I was there, as soon as I got the playbook, I was in it. Made sure I knew the plays for all 3 days I was there. They kind of did it into 3 installs, but I was like, I'm gonna get this all down just right now.
Okay.
One, just to learn and repeat the plays and be able to say them, but the other thing, you know, to learn my reads and know what I have to do on each given play. And I think I really impressed them with that. It got to a point where you know, they would put me up on the board, have me draw plays, have me explain different scenarios. And it got to the point where they're like, all right, we don't even need to do this with you anymore. Like, you obviously know everything. They actually started going into more details about other plays that they weren't planning on teaching me, just because I got everything down so fast. He's like, all right, we don't even need to be in this room anymore. Let's just go out on the field and work footwork for these plays, stuff like that. So I just wanted to make the most of my opportunity. I feel like I did that.
Hell yeah, dude. That's pretty special. That's cool stuff. And I mean, in that sense too, one, obviously, you know, you're impressive from a prospect standpoint, from an athlete standpoint, as someone who, like you said, on a 2-day turnaround can come in there and put their nose in the playbook. And not only just do that, like you said, it's one thing to, yes, hear play, recite play, robotic. We know, everyone who's watched football knows that everything in football is situational. So understanding the play, but then how that fits, like you said, into a larger scheme and try and make those plays and move in that capacity. That feels like that would be ridiculously difficult. Was there a first series first kind of couple moments for you where you just had to, I don't know, pinch yourself, shake some of that out and just get playing loose? Or how do you get to that point, man, in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, just have people, read the play to me and repeat it, when we're not doing it. So I can, it got at the first practice, it was like, hear the play, try to repeat the play, break the huddle, and then figure out what I just said, that type of thing.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah.
these are some lengthy plays now. You got to be able
Yeah.
to repeat. And you can't, get one part wrong because then the whole play screwed up. But,
Uh-huh.
by the second, third day, I was able to say the play and know what was going on for sure. 100%. But yeah, it's a crazy process, but it's part of football.
Yeah, 100%, man. And when you talk about, longevity and that standpoint, you got a roster that's got Prescott on it, obviously. Cooper Rush, who I didn't know was part of that. And then you go down to Trey Lance. Certainly not an easy get from a quarterback perspective. What were those conversations like with them as far as them evaluating your performance and any potential moving forward? How did that go from a guy in your position that just came in there looking hungry for anything?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of at first they weren't even thinking about taking 4 QBs into their training camp. Like, I mean, their third guy in the depth chart's a former first round pick, so they really just wanted to come in there and have an arm. But I'm glad I made them reevaluate that. Even being able to pique their interest and be like, hey, maybe this guy can help. The special teams guy saw that I was a punter. And he's like, hey, in the preseason, we might have you, punt some balls for us because I want my punter to take all the reps. I don't think he knew I was on a tryout basis because I was like the only one.
Yeah.
So I think
you're
think
like in the preseason game, me?
Yeah, I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna tell him no, I might not be here, but it was awesome, just being a part of all those conversations. So yeah, in the OTAs that's going on right now through the summer. They really feel like they need to be able to give Trey Lance, their third string guy, those more reps. So that's why, the summer wasn't going to be able to work out for me. But maybe down the line in training camp or something like that, hopefully, I could always get a call back. So we will see. We'll see about that, see what the future holds. But I'm glad I made him even evaluate, hey, maybe we should have this guy in as a fourth guy. Plus, I think it helped that I could be of value on special teams.
Yeah. No, 100%. And how many quarterbacks can do that, right? The number's pretty small, especially at that level.
With the other positions, there's more receivers than there are QBs on the roster type thing, and a place where receivers can earn their spot on the team through special teams, and it's usually not like that for a quarterback.
No.
So yeah, so I'm kind of that double-edged sword at that quarterback spot that I feel like, hey, I could kind of level the playing field with being able to try to make a team in that type of way.
I was thinking unicorn, but we'll go with sword. That sounds
that's cool too. Yeah.
Sword sounds double-edged sword sounds better. But no, you're right. That is and that's something too. I mean, you look at from D2, D3, NAIA, whatever it is, to the pros, quarterback's got to be one of the smallest position groups that makes that jump. And now seeing a guy like Bajent make that process, and yeah, he didn't go in and light the league on fire, but go in and be a serviceable NFL quarterback and win in the NFL, that's got to be a pretty cool feeling to be in that situation, pretty closely removed from seeing him do that on the big stage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he kind of, paved the path to show that D2 guys can play in the NFL. And I'm glad it happened the year before I got there, so he can kind of show people that. And it definitely, I'm pretty sure, is, giving other D2 guys an opportunity to be able to come in and compete. So yeah, it was awesome to see that.
Yeah, man. And I mean, obviously, D2 guys have made an impact across the NFL. We just don't see it at the quarterback position a lot because it is such a, I mean, you talk about the intangibles are very important. When you get to a quarterback, though, all these different measurables and things that they have are typically the reasons why guys end up D2, D3, NAIA, because they're usually because of those reasons. So a lot of things are stacked up against them. But you're not the only small school guy when it comes to quarterback that got a chance this year. You look at Corey Curtis, who's a couple little, but 2 years removed now, I believe, from Gannon, getting a tryout over there with the Seahawks. West Florida, Pee Wee Jarrett had a little stint there with the Gens, Augustana, Casey Bauman, all found their way to NFL camps, which is really sweet. Do you keep up with those guys' stories, journeys? Do you have any communication with them at all?
I don't have any communication with them, but, I see it on Twitter, and I think it's awesome that, guys that are from smaller schools are getting a chance to be able to compete, just to show what we can do. And, the more the guys can break into those rosters, I think the more NFL teams will be like, hey, we might have some guys here that we could pay a lot less, and they could do a good job for us. So I think that's awesome.
That's a good point too, and something that maybe isn't brought up quite as much, because when you look at an NFL team where they're going to make their cost saving moves, typically not in the quarterback room, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
When you're talking about a guy that, again, someone in your shoes, you're not coming in, to be a starter, at least, especially not right away, and you probably wouldn't be a backup in most places, but like a QB3. And now you're talking about, okay, like what do those contracts really look like? And can you actually save money but also provide a lot of value, like you talked about in the special teams game? That's a different perspective that I actually don't believe I've thought about before, especially in your position.
Yeah, I mean, especially in my case, like I said earlier, I can punt too.
Yeah.
So if your punter goes down, you don't gotta bring one in the day before a game. If he pulls a hamstring, like, hey, we got an emergency punter waiting for us. It's our third string QB. And I'm down to do anything. They can have me play any position. I do it. So any way I could sneak in the door, I'm down for it.
That's good, dude. Yeah, and I mean, again, bare minimum, this opportunity, you got your name in those circles, and you impress those guys in that room and the people that you work with. And one, obviously, now you have relationships in that building and that facility. But then two, those guys move on to wherever, and the NFL is this one big. They say it's one big family, which is the craziest thing in the world. But that's what they say. And so your name is in those circles, which is really exciting. But what's the next couple months look like for you?
Just keep training, staying ready. My agent's going to be talking to teams, whether it's NFL, CFL, just kind of seeing if I can get my foot in the door in one of those leagues by the time a training camp happens, and just keep training. The UFL will be a spring league that, they're playing in next year too. So really just staying ready for anything. I got a call 2 days before the Cowboys camp. So, I can get a call, tomorrow and tell, be down Thursday again. So, we'll see. I'm just staying ready for anything that happens.
Run it back, dude. That was the next question anyways, was asking about, potentially pursuing some of the other league opportunities, because right now you do have a couple different ones, which is good. So, sweet, man. That's about all I had for you. I'm excited for you, though, dude. This had to be a pretty crazy experience. And just like you said, being in that environment, was it tough to not be a little awestruck and just kind of looking around, or did you settle in immediately?
It was crazy, especially at Dallas. The facilities,
I was going to say,
the facilities were top notch. I mean, they're hosting while I was there, they were about to host the Country Music Awards.
Okay.
Yeah, they had Kenny Chesney in the weight room working out because he knows one of the people on the training staff. Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, ridiculous.
The food, first dinner there was like surf and turf type dinner, and it was just like a 5-star restaurant. So. The facility is definitely a little different from D2 in the way you get treated. But I loved it, and it's definitely the environment I feel like I should be a part of. So I'm excited for the future.
No, you just got to believe you belong there, brother. What did Jerry Jones said? Something along. I won't even try and do an impression, but something along the lines of my hand don't cramp writing checks.
Yeah. I mean, they even got free Ubers for people on the team.
Damn.
So. Yeah, anywhere they want to go.
That's big.
That's big. Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That's big.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize,
They definitely set their players up for success there, and it was awesome to be a part of it.
That is cool, man. Sweet. Mike, once again, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for spending a little time with me, man. Excited to see whatever the next step holds for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate what you do for all small school guys.
You're the man. Appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
Yep, you too.
See ya. All right, big thank you to Mike for joining me here. We're going to move over and talk about that coach I mentioned in the opener, coming from a Power 4 all the way to being the head coach at NAIA squad. And the man is Brad Sherrod. He's going to be the head coach at Texas Wesleyan, somewhere I'm not incredibly familiar with, down in the Sooner Athletic Conference. They're a good squad. They've been in the top 3 in the conference the last 3 years, won it just a couple of years back, and a lot of history there. We'll talk about that. But Brad Sherrod, where might I know him from, Kobe? Let me tell you. He was most recently at UTSA. He was their linebackers coach, right? But you might also know him from Tennessee State. Maybe at Duke when he was playing at Duke. Maybe at Duke when he was coaching at Duke. You might know him from Delaware. You might know him from East Tennessee State, Elon, Massachusetts, Sam Houston State, Wake Forest, Western Carolina, one of his 2 NFL internships. Holy shit. This guy's a lifer, man. He's an absolute lifer. And he's coming to a program that's got some very interesting history. So very exciting news for Texas Wesleyan down there. Like I said, they've seen a lot of success in recent history. So it's not like this is a program that needs a total rebuild or anything of that nature, which I'm sure was a big part in his process to getting him down there. I mean, you talk about these guys who coaching is just, it's obviously their livelihood, it's their duty, it's their job, but this is just all over the place, man. So kudos to him. He's elevated a lot of different football programs across the country, and they've been a part of some programs like UTSA, and probably they're one of their better portions in their team history. But as far as Texas Wesleyan is concerned, again, I wasn't too familiar, so I did a little bit of research. And this is a team that's got a lot of history. They began playing football in 1934. So you think, oh man, they've been playing for almost damn near a century of football, and you'd actually be incorrect. They started in 1934 under that name of Texas Wesleyan. Before that, they were playing as Polytechnic College as early as 1902. So over 100 years. No, they suspended their football program during World War II, and it was not brought back until 2016. So you have this period, this long gap where there was no football in this school's history. And they obviously had it before, but it wasn't brought back till 2016. They brought in, typically how we talked about some of these programs bringing on football, they did it the right way, I think. They brought in that class 2016, 2017, redshirted the whole class, and then began competition heading into the following year. I believe that might have been the fall of 17, or it might have been the fall of 18, one of the two, but right around that timeline. And so for a team that wasn't competing really until 2017, 2018, you're talking about a squad that in the 2020s is, already in the top 3 of the conference. And you look at, the conference, there's quite a lot of talent in this conference here. You pull up the standings just so you guys are familiar, because I'm not too familiar with some of the squads down there, but when you look at the standings for this conference here, I will pull them up for you. You'll see there's some pretty top competition, especially in the upper half of what we're looking at here. Louisiana Christian is a squad that we talked about at nauseum last year. They're kind of on the outer fringe of that top 25 team receiving votes a lot of the time. And then you go down the list, man, there's some other pretty solid squads. Again, it's kind of this top half of the conference that is pretty competitive. You look towards the bottom half, there's not quite as much depth there. But there you are. You see it from this last year, 2023, Texas Wesleyan, 7-1 in conference play. 8-2 overall. I mean, that's a pretty solid year. And when you have some of those other squads in your conference that you're competing against on a year in, year out basis, that's a lot to be known for. So they bring in Sherrod to be the head man down there. Don't have too much more info for you at this time. All I know is the man started the position now. He's into the recruiting process and kind of, everything that comes with the head coaching role, getting his guys in there and trying to move on. But at the D2 level, we got some pretty cool news. When the University of Central Missouri dropped their 2024 schedule, the Mules at UCM, they're the top offense in the country. Not top passing, not top rushing. Well, they did have the top passing, but just the top overall offense in the country. Incredible. A lot of it was due to that man right there. We put in the graphics, Zach Zabrowski, the Harlan Hill winner this past year. That was a layup because he broke a lot of different records. He did a lot of things. But this schedule for them, I think the first word that comes to me is holy gauntlet. We know the MIAA is a tough conference, right? When you're talking about teams, UCM is one of them, but you're talking about teams at the forefront of your mind. You're looking at Pittsburgh State, you're looking at Northwest, right? Northwest Missouri State. Those are typically the 2 top dogs. But now in recent years, you're talking about squads like Emporia, the year they had last year, the explosive offense they had, a team like Nebraska Kearney that they're always gonna play you tough. UCO over there in Central Oklahoma. You got Missouri Western that comes and surprises people. They beat Pittsburgh State, I believe, was their one loss last year. Missouri Southern is no slouch. And now you're going down the list in this conference. You talk about depth in the landscape of Division II, and I'm obviously always been a proponent of GLIAC football. The MIAA has depth, man. There's a lot of really quality teams on this list. And then you look at some of the teams that are trying to figure it out still. And we're going to have the head coach of Northeastern State here on the show shortly. But Coach Shav, he's got a lot of stuff going on down there for, I believe, the Riverhawks down in the Quad. So, like, the teams that aren't really in it are taking the right steps and are going to be competitive shortly. This conference is definitely a gauntlet. But we're not talking about that conference today. We're talking specifically week 3. Actually, I don't know if that's week 3 or week 2 because I don't know. Is that a week 0 game? The first one? Let's see. 1, 2, 3. They got 11 games. So, I mean, I don't know. They maybe have a bye mixed in there somewhere. I doubt it. But let's say week 3 for the sake of the argument. Davenport. That is a big one. right? And we talk about, let's talk about this matchup a little bit. UCM, Davenport, what that's going to look like. And, what can we use to compare? It's obviously this past year and like who's leaving, who's staying, those type of things. But like I talked about, number one offense in the country. That's a lot of pieces are coming back. 2023, the biggest piece of that, Zach Zabrowski under center for them. That is huge. He does lose his top target, Arkell Smith. We've talked about a good bit on this show. He signed to the Edmonton Elks in the CFL, who I believe are like 13 or 14-time Grey Cup champions. Really solid squad over there up north across the border. And also losing DeMarcus Gregory, who those two combined, last year, they combined for over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. Now, Arkell, I believe, had like 13 or 1,400 of those yards. But still, nonetheless, two really big pieces of that offense on the outside between Smith and Gregory that will be gone for the passing attack for the Mules. Now, still a very underappreciated running attack, as well as the offensive line play. I think that got lost when you look at the stats that this squad was putting up on the ground. I think a lot of the passing statistics, obviously, like, that was the news, right? But when you look at the rushing attack from this team, I think that was something that went underappreciated rather, for them last year. I'll pull up some of those to kind of shine some light on more of those. Davenport, though, I wanted to talk a little bit more defensively about them, because when you talk about an offense of this caliber, what can you do to slow them down? On the rushing side of things, Marcellus Hawkins was their leading rusher, and he's a sophomore. I'm assuming he'll be back. Over 1,000-yard rusher on the year. He's averaging almost 7 yards per carry at 18 tuds. Like, those are not average rushing numbers. There's a reason this is the number one offense in the country. That offensive line does not get enough credit, and they went up against the best, right? You're in a region with Harding. You went toe-to-toe with Harding and lose out on that last-minute extra point, which was ridiculous. But you went toe-to-toe with Harding, who we know in the trenches is unparalleled, really, in Division II. So that offensive line deserves a lot of credit. We'll see what happens with that unit moving forward. Davenport, they had a top 25 defense in the country last year, so they're certainly, while they're not number one, they're certainly in that same caliber of team, you would assume. Returning two of their top defensive backs, which is going to be a big deal when you have a passing attack as potent as Zabrowski and company over there. And that being right here, I'll shout out the post from Flow Football and the gang. Chris Thompson and Ty Martin, those two coming back in the defensive secondary for Davenport. Those are going to be big-time, I wouldn't say additions, big-time retentions for the Panthers over there. Is that correct? Coach Sparky and company down there in Grand Rapids. So that'll be big. They had 3 interceptions each last year, so that's pretty big contribution. 6 PBUs apiece. And when you look at their passing defense in total, cumulative last year for the Panthers, they only allowed 3 games over 200 yards passing in 2023, which in a day and age of college football that we've seen, only 3 games over 200 yards passing I thought was pretty interesting. Only 1 game over 300, I do believe. And that for me was, that was an interesting one. When you look at, Central Missouri, they were averaging 420 yards a game about passing. 420. And on the ground, they had an additional, 176. That's wild. But again, you're talking about good versus good here. Great versus great. That Davenport defense did a lot against some really potent offenses, and they didn't really let them get it done through the air. They're losing their leading tackler, though, Julius Wilkerson. He's the linebacker. He went to Bucks minicamp. I believe he was actually a transfer over from other GLIAC school, Wayne State, down in Detroit, Michigan. He comes over to Davenport, was a stud for them, and you can replace guys, but it's tough to replicate 80 tackles last year of production from Julius. He's a guy that they are sorely going to miss. He did get at least an opportunity at the next level. He was invited over to the rookie minicamp with the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay in the NFL. So that's pretty neat. He's a 6'1", 230 linebacker, big time. He was a finalist for the Campbell Trophy, and he was the only Division II player honored. So he was, like I said, kind of the leader in the heart and soul of that defense last year. I saw him play in person. Dude's a stud. Certainly deserved a shot at the next level. So that's going to be a fun matchup for me that I just saw and I eyeballed as far as the D2 landscape is concerned. That's what we talked about, good versus good, great versus great. Davenport right now, you're at a spot where you've had some success, right? You've had a good amount of success. You've beaten some quality teams. You've beaten everyone in the GLIAC except for the top dogs. Top dogs, I mean literally in Ferris, but also in Grand Valley, obviously, who's won the league back-to-back years. But Right now for Davenport, you're at a point where, especially in a recruiting point, where you need to separate yourself. And you talk about these tiers in the conference. Davenport has to take that next step, right? And scheduling a team like Central Missouri, they've historically done pretty well in out-of-conference matchups the last couple of years. Davenport has. I think you go back to some games like a great win over down at Truman State last year or 2 years ago. That comes to my mind right away, a Truman State squad that has been really good in that GLVC conference down there. But anyways, bringing up UCM and scheduling a game like that, I think that's a prove-it game for Davenport. And also, what I think is really worth noting, you look at last year in the playoff standing, especially in Super Region 3, where Grand Valley and Ferris State both got into the playoffs, Davenport did not lose a game other than the GV and Ferris, 2 playoff teams. Did not lose a game. I believe they only had 10 games, I want to say, so they're 8-2. I could be wrong. Either way, they had 2 losses. Did not make the playoffs. Did not make the playoffs because we talk about it at nauseam. Super Region 3, is a gauntlet. GV, Ferris, Pitt State, UCM, Harding. And then you throw in who am I missing? Indianapolis was in there. And was it Henderson State? Might have been that last one. Who, no slouches either. Obviously, they're playoff teams. No shots at those guys. But I believe the number was something crazy. We talk about the overall rankings that maybe 4 of the top 6 teams were in Super Region number 3. And so for Davenport, for me, from an outsider's perspective, this feels like, yeah, we're scheduling this game and we win a game like that. Even if you do have 2 losses on your record now with a win like that, which not, again, it's going to be a great game. This is no pushover for Davenport. They know that. But you go down, say you do that, and you get a win in that type of contest, and now you're a 2-loss team that has beaten the reigning Harlan Hill winner and the best offense in the country last year. I'm assuming they're going to have that production very similar this year. Now, all of a sudden, that 8-2 resume and that 8-2 portfolio, if you will, that carries a little bit more weight going into the playoff conversation. Now, those super regions are going to change in 2025, and Conference Carolinas brings in football, and we have a little bit of a shakeup. The regions will make a lot more geographic sense, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it is what it is. So that's kind of the lowdown on the Davenport and UCM matchup that I'm very excited about that one. I love to see how the GLIAC compares, especially when you talk about that MIAA conference and a Mules team right now that is on the top. They were co-champions this last year with Pittsburgh State. We'll kind of stay in the GLIAC in a sense, in that Roosevelt University has their first year as a full Division II program inside of the GLIAC, and the GLIAC isn't the most interesting part of their schedule. What's interesting about this schedule is the variety and the parity here, right? You look at this. They open up at home versus Whitewater, right? A really quality Division III opponent and the WIAC. Then you go on the road to Valparaiso, and that's a Division I. Now, albeit Division I non-scholarship FCS is a Division I by rule. Then you go on the road at Campbellsville, an NAIA squad, and then you start your D2 play, where else than at Ferris State in Big Rapids. Holy hell. I mean, then you get into, excuse the allergies, then you get into GLIAC conference play, which we know is a gauntlet, close out the year with the other Lakers, which, by the way, we have 3 Lakers in the GLIAC now. What the hell? Roosevelt, Grand Valley, and Lake Superior State does not have football, but they're the Lakers as well. Can we come up with some more fucking original name? Like, is it that hard? I don't know. These schools have been around long enough. Let's get our shit together. But I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about this schedule. And for me, this is probably the first time, at least for me, I've been covering small school football since the freaking 90s. I've been covering it for the last 3 years. But for me, this is probably the most parity I've seen in the schedule. When was the last time you saw a school that had D3, NAIA, D2, and D1 opponents all in the same schedule in the same year? That's very interesting. And now when we talk about looking through and actually looking at this schedule, what is Roosevelt going to do this year, right? They're a team that, saw some success last year in NAIA. Actually had, I believe, a pretty good record. I know they had a winning record. But I'll have to, hold on, let me double check that one before I start talking out of my ass. I don't want to say some random stuff on here. But yeah, Roosevelt has seen success at the NAIA level, 6-4 last year, playing some tough competition, right? So when you look at Roosevelt last year and those 4 losses, the first one comes week 1 to the team that was in the national championship, the defending national champions in North Central. And then you go loss number 2 against number 4 in the country, Indiana Wesleyan. That's a tough draw. Okay, loss number 3, number 12 in the country, high-powered offense down there in Tennessee at number 12, Bethel. And then finally, your last loss against number 13 in the country, St. Xavier, dude. Like, You didn't. All your games are lost to top 25 teams, and you beat a top 25 team in St. Francis, who was number 17 at the time. So when I say they had success, don't let that 6-4 record fool you. This Roosevelt squad was pretty potent in 2023 when it comes to their higher ranked opponents. So this is not anything new to them, but I'll tell you right now, Whitewater, they're going to stack up with any of those squads. I mean, we know that. We're in the Midwest. We know that those WIAC teams compare really strong to these teams. So going back to looking at the schedule, kind of breaking it down, Roosevelt might struggle in their first year. I mean, that's what happens when you transfer to Division II. You look at games that they, could hopefully pick up here in this first year for them. Whitewater's going to be a tough one. It is in Chicago. Who knows, right? Probably a reach, but that's going to be a really tough game. I mean, shit, you look at the GLIAC in recent years, Grand Valley was tied at halftime with La Crosse just 2 years ago. And, I believe it was La Crosse. And then the La Crosse went down and beat Wayne State, some other WIAC team. Michigan Tech had a great battle with Platteville last year. Northern has not fared very well against those WIAC foes, that competition. I believe those are the only ones that have kind of gone into that water. But the WIAC has compared very well to a really good football conference. So that first game against Whitewater is going to be tough. Then you go at Valpo, and that's an interesting one. It's kind of a question mark in that one in my mind, because like I said, it's FCS non-scholarship, and I'd be lying to you if I said that's as competitive as scholarship teams. They still are quality football teams, but you see a lot more crossover there with NAIA, and there's a lot of that. We've seen NAIA and even D3 teams that have gone and beat those squads, so it's not anything that's unheard of. At Campbellsville, even that one, you would think, okay, could be a dub. Campbellsville, very similar situation last year when you look at their schedule for, I believe it's either the Tigers. Yes, the Tigers. Now, they were 4-6, but again, you have to read into more of this schedule. Their losses came at 1 point against the University of Pikeville, who had a great offense, good QB last year. Just 13 points to Bluefield. Again, solid squad. You go and you beat Union, you beat Cumberland, a couple solid squads there. You lose to Lindsey Wilson, who was a top caliber team. You lose to Cumberland's by 3, lose to that same Bethel squad, and then Georgetown. So in the Mid-South, there's a pretty good parity of competition there. So that's 4-6, doesn't really say everything about that squad. So that could be a tough one. And you get into GLIAC play. And again, if you're Roosevelt, you're telling yourself, yeah, this, we're going to try and pick up 4 or 5 wins. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry to be a downer. You're looking at, you get 3 wins out of this year. I feel like you call that a success. If you're Roosevelt, and that sounds really downer of me, I'm typically trying to be more of a positive guy on this show and promote these teams. But you look at this schedule. I'm not doing a legit prediction. I don't really do that shit. But I'm looking at it. I see if they get 3 wins. If they get 3 wins out of this year, I think that's a success for them as they start to get into D2. 4 wins like that. You're getting to 4 wins. That's a solid year for Roosevelt coming into this. Coming into this year, and it looks like they've only got 10 games as well. So you talk about 4-6. If that was your first year in D2 in this conference with this kind of competition, you schedule some tough out-of-conference games. 4-6 would be a solid year for the Lakers. We'll see what they do, though. We'll see what they do. They could certainly over or underachieve that. We're not really sure. And I talk about some of that parity. Valpo lost to Indiana Wesleyan last year, went 3-8. So that could be a game that Roosevelt finds some success in. We'll see, man. Finally, though, on the pod, how about North Park University? Excuse me, I almost butchered that one. North Park University, they went out to Italy, played a little game of American football. Vikings at Lugano, the Frogs, game day. This was just yesterday as I'm recording this. Today is the 20th. So this was just yesterday. It was at Velodromo Vigorelli. I totally just fucked that up. Milan, Italy. But how cool is that? North Park, the Vikings, they're a D3 squad. I believe they're in the CCIW. I could be mistaken. They go out to Italy and play that game. We talked about it earlier. We've seen squads like Alma go out to Scotland. We've seen a couple other D3 teams kind of take this international route. And each time, I just think it's worth mentioning because you talk about having this level of experience. And I think when people typically think of this international experience, their mind probably goes to the stuff they've seen of Michigan football, these other D1 programs that go and do these team bonding activities. The fact that we can show people that this is something that transcends levels of football and that there are D3 teams getting opportunities like this. And now, granted, the stands aren't going to be packed over there. It's Italy, right? It's not North Park, wherever, somewhere, I think that's down in Illinois. But here's some shots from the actual stadium, which I do say, Pretty sweet setup here. I don't know what kind of like hooting and hollering and barking we got going on from the team running out there. That was a little odd. But a pretty sweet. I mean, as far as a venue and a stadium goes, this is pretty badass. American flag is a nice touch. That was kind of a layup, huh? But going through this, man, this is pretty cool. Really sweet venue. You've got the presentation of the American flag there. Sorry, I clipped a little bit of that audio. Really solid presentation there. And there you have the captains, midfield. The game, if you're wondering, not incredibly competitive, 62-0. The Vikings took that one. I think we've seen a lot of that when these American football teams, D3 or otherwise, they go overseas, man, and they tear shit up against some of these other overseas squads. But really, really cool stuff from North Park. And, the big part of this, too, is that it's not all about the football game, right? It's about the visit and the sightseeing and the team bonding, the experience that you share with these guys and being able to do this together. How about some of the squad posted up in front of, I'm assuming, is the Coliseum. That's the only thing that I can think of that looks like that. So, pretty cool. Touchdown in Italy, it says. And really, really cool stuff. The guys to go out and make experiences like this, I think, is really special. I pay good money to go see that. That'd be pretty cool. This is probably some old Vatican something. I wish I could tell you, but my expertise is in small school football and not archaeology. There's another great shot in front of whatever kind of facility that is. And just, again, seeing the sights, doing the things, having those experiences. That's what D3 football is about. That's what small school football is about, man. On and off the field, there's a lot of great opportunities for these guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. This has been D1 Rejects.